On 6:30 a.m. on Sunday morning, hundreds of thousands of Israelis awoke to the sound of rocket alarm sirens blaring across central Israel as the Houthis from Yemen shot a ballistic missile at central Israel. Several hours after the attack, Prime Minister Netanyahu said, "We are in a multi-front campaign against Iran's axis of evil, which is seeking our destruction." I'm Hanan Lishinsky, and in this All Israel News Update, we're going to take a look around at the various threats facing Israel across numerous fronts, but they all have one factor behind them, and that is Iran, the Iranian regime, and its axis of evil. So we'll start with the most recent large-scale event. Yesterday morning, Sunday morning, as I said, hundreds of thousands of Israelis were awoken by the sound of rocket alarm sirens, which were triggered shortly after 6:30 in the morning. Now, the Yemeni Houthi rebel group and terror group once again had shot a ballistic missile at Israel. Now, this is more than 2,000 kilometers, approximately 1,200 miles of a distance that this missile traveled. Apparently, because it was a ballistic missile, it traveled this distance in around 12 minutes. So shortly after 6:30 in the morning, rocket alarm sirens were triggered across central Israel, the area surrounding Tel Aviv, and to the east, reaching the areas of Modi'in, a small town between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Now, here at All Israel News, most of us, we live in Jerusalem or the surrounding areas. We didn't notice this at all. It was several kilometers to the west from where we are here in the Jerusalem mountains. Now, a ballistic missile is a very serious weapon and could have caused great damage, but apparently, according to the IDF's investigations at the moment, the IDF said that the Air Force tracked the missile approximately from the time of its launch and knew that it was coming. The Israeli Air Force then shot one or several Arrow interceptor missiles at the ballistic missiles from Yemen. Apparently, the interceptor missiles managed to hit the ballistic missile, but didn't destroy it completely. So what we saw in Israel were several impacts, apparently, of rocket fragments from the ballistic missile, and they caused small fires, but no major damage, and also no direct casualties. 9 people were injured while rushing to a bunker. Shortly after the attack, a spokesman for the Houthi organization claimed that the missile fired was a hypersonic missile. A hypersonic missile would be a very serious weapon, another escalation, and due to its very high speed and the height, it even ascends into the atmosphere before descending on its target. This would be a weapon that is very hard to intercept. However, the IDF stressed that according to the most recent information the army has, no enemies of Israel possess such a hypersonic missile. So the army dismissed the claims that this was a hypersonic missile. It appears from the information that we have that the IDF indeed managed to hit the missile, didn't completely destroy it, and then we saw fragments falling down across central Israel, some in Modi'in, some in Kfar Daniel nearby, and no major damage or casualties came as a result of this attack. So in conclusion, the IDF said it would continue to investigate what went wrong with the interception of the ballistic missile from Yemen, while Prime Minister Netanyahu said that the Houthis would pay a heavy price, implying that something similar might happen to what we saw with the Israeli attack on the Yemeni port city of Hodeidah just a couple of months back. And the ballistic missile fired from Yemen was claimed to be a response to that. So we'll see where this goes. Now, next, we'll look at what has been described as the crown jewel of Iran's axis of evil, or axis of resistance, as they like to call themselves, and that is Hezbollah in Lebanon. So if we look back at what has happened the past weeks on the northern border of Israel, on Israel's northern front, we can see that just a couple of weeks back, if you remember, Hezbollah was about to launch a large-scale attack on Israel, as it says, in revenge of the killing of its military chief Fuad Shukr by Israel just a couple of weeks back. Now, Hezbollah wanted to launch its large strike. The IDF saw this, IDF intelligence managed to see preparations, and the IDF launched a large-scale preemptive strike to prevent this large-scale attack that was planned by Hezbollah. In the days afterwards, we saw several IDF officers, for example, say that Hezbollah was shocked by the extent of the attacks, of the Israeli attacks. And what we saw in the field for a couple of days was a decrease in attacks by Hezbollah. However, since then, Hezbollah has again increased its attacks to around the level that we saw before that, and even rising above that level. For example, just the past weekend, remember in Israel, Friday and Saturday are the weekend, so for us the weekend is already past now. The past weekend saw hundreds of rockets being fired at northern Israel. The residents of northern Israel, those who haven't been evacuated, spent large parts of the weekend in their bunkers for fear of more attacks, rockets and drones and so on. And even yesterday on Sunday, which is the first day of the week here in Israel, there were 40 rockets that were fired by Hezbollah at northern Israel and several drones launched. All in all, Hezbollah claimed responsibility for 11 attacks, which is slightly above average and is just on par for the slight increase over the last days in intensity and scope of the attacks that northern Israel has witnessed. In response, the IDF followed its usual policy of striking Hezbollah targets across southern Lebanon, also striking Hezbollah operatives wherever it can find them. And in a somewhat unusual statement, the IDF said that on Sunday evening it struck around 20 rocket launchers of Hezbollah in one strike around the same time in parallel. But this again is a slight degradation of Hezbollah's capabilities, but be assured that this terror organization has many more rockets and many more rocket launchers, and drastic action will be necessary apparently to solve this issue on Israel's northern border. Now, the Biden administration continues its efforts to find a diplomatic solution. Today on Monday, Amos Hochstein, the White House special envoy, will arrive again in Israel to continue to find a diplomatic solution, but no one seems to believe that that is possible, and we're hearing many reports and rumors in Israeli media that a large-scale Israeli operation may be closing in. Now, if you want to know more about who Hezbollah is and what the history and what the goals of this terror group are, you can visit our All Israel News 101 and click in the corner here, follow the link, and learn more about this terror group. Over the past 24 hours, the attack by the Houthis with their ballistic missile and the rocket barrages fired by Hezbollah were the main story even here in Israel. But let's remember, if we're looking at the Iranian axis of evil, as we're calling it, it has many groups, and it is also supporting, for example, terror groups in Judea and Samaria, as well as Hamas in Gaza. So let's keep in mind that if we're looking at this as a whole, Iran has its tentacles across the region and is supporting many groups. And these challenges continue even as Israel continues fighting in the Gaza Strip. So for example, just yesterday, there was an attempted terror stabbing in the old city of Jerusalem near the Damascus Gate. Meanwhile, large-scale counter-terror raids by the IDF are continuing across Judea and Samaria, especially in Samaria, and the operation Summer Camps, as it has been called, which is meant to root out this terror, much of which is being funded and directed by Iran, is continuing as well. Despite decreasing media coverage of the numerous threats facing Israel and the fighting across numerous fronts, it's important to keep in mind that here in Israel, we continue every week, every month, something new happens, we're facing a new challenge, and as our Prime Minister said, this is Iran's axis of evil, which continues to threaten us and continue to try to destroy Israel. Despite the decrease in media coverage and worldwide attention on what is happening here in Israel, we who live here in Israel know and continue to be very aware of the numerous threats facing us across numerous fronts, and as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, this Iranian axis of evil continues to try to exert every effort to destroy this country and destroy Israel. And if you want to continue to be up to date and read the latest news and what is happening here and across the region, you can visit us on allisrael.com or on our social media channels.